What I've got here is a piece of plywood that I cross-cut yesterday, and I want to use this for my new router table for the top. I'm kind of going a little bit cheap on this. I could use 1/2-inch Baltic birch, but I just wanted to show that it is possible with these cheaper grades. Up here in Canada, we call this kind of plywood good one side. That's one side of the plywood is good, as in it's paint grade, you could say. The other side is, it's still good, but it's not as good as the other side. And one of the problems with this type of plywood is that it can develop a bend. It will not stay flat. And I'll take my straight edge here and I'll try to illustrate that. And I can see, if I can get the straight edge of this actually, I can see that it's buckled inwards a 1/4 inch in the middle, less so on the bottom. And I think part of the reason for that is because the other side is not as smooth as the front side. The front side is sanded really nice and smooth, whereas the back side is much rougher, you could say. It has a more open grain. And I think what's happening here is that this rougher texture is absorbing more moisture from the air and therefore making the plywood bend like that. If you get more moisture on this side, it swells and it makes the thing cup this way. So I think one way to fix that is to sand this as smooth as the face. Without sanding it, I'm going to try to dry out this side a little bit more and see if that's actually the case. So I'm going to turn on the thing to high and warm it up. Okay, I didn't get very far with the heat gun because it's not as concentrated a heat source as I think you need for this to get it done quickly anyway. Another option would be to take it out and lay it in the sun on a hot day, but hot days are not here, I'll tell you that much. We've had nothing but rain for the past long while, so that's not helping the situation either. As you heat this up, the relative humidity in here is pretty high anyway, so that makes it more receptive for pulling it back in. I can only hope or think that the evaporation would be higher than the absorption once you get it up to a certain temperature. And so that's why I have the iron that I used for putting veneer on. Just rub it over it a few times and see if there's any improvement. You feel the heat radiating off it. And it looks like it's a little bit better. And it's not. It's something that would take time, I'm sure. I think that is the reason though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sand this with 220 grit paper to make it nice and smooth. And then I'm going to leave it overnight with some weight on it actually to try to counteract that bend. And I'll check again tomorrow and see if it actually worked. I should point out that this doesn't have to be 100% flat for my router table, since it'll be screwed down to the structure underneath and that will pull it down flat. I got to leave that overnight, so I'll check back in. In the meantime, I'm going to make the supports for the miter saw station so I can, cross-cut wide panels there. They'll be able to slide out and support the thing. You'll see it when I do the video. Anyway, I got a piece of wood here to use for that. It's once again a piece of the plywood that I harvested from my old entertainment center, and you can see one side is finished here and the other side is plain. Now this plywood was nice and flat when I first got it, and it was unfinished of course, and this is what happens to it when you finish one side. This is exactly the same thing as I was talking about there. When you finish one side, you restrict the amount of moisture that can penetrate it, and the other side is wide open to the air, so it, it takes on moisture whenever the relative humidity goes up. So you can see, I don't know if you can see that. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Well, take my word for it, it's not straight, it's cupped inwards. So this side is picking up moisture from the air and it's swelling outwards. And the side that's finished is stopping that from happening. Not 100%. These urethane type finishes are not completely impervious to moisture, but they do slow it down quite a lot. And that's why ideally you'd finish the panel on both sides with exactly the same treatment to keep it as flat as possible, if that's an important concern for you. I left this to sit overnight, and take the motor off and we'll have a look. I don't expect much of a change here because it's still super damp here. And yeah, when I look at it, that's a little bit, certainly. There's an improvement for sure. Now I can't say 100% whether that's from the sanding it smooth and heating it up, although I would guess that that didn't hurt, obviously, or the weight pressing it down. I don't think the weight really did much, to be honest, but no, it looks like it's a little bit improved. Where I'm going to go from here is I'm not going to do anything else with this panel because I need it for my miters, my router table, and I want to get going on that project. And like I said, it's not really critical that this be super flat for that, but I thought it was an interesting experiment, and I think it does have some validity. If you can get it into, like if you could do this during the summer, or I mean during the winter when it's really nice and dry, then that I think would make the difference. But here now it's just too humid. There's too much moisture in the air. So when I heat this up, sure, it's letting the heat out, the moisture out, but it's also pulling moisture back in. Another thing that I could have done was to add moisture to this smooth side, and that would have counteracted the cupping on the other side. But I didn't want to go to that extent. I think that what I did here will actually work given the right amount of time, and if it's at the right time of the year, certainly at a time of the year when there's less moisture in the air.